In conversation with Ebenezer Ho Makinde. Ebenezer Ho Makinde is an international award-winning author of six books: Reign of Freedom, Light of Darkness, Oakland, Castle's King, World of Diamonds, and The Wonderful Attic of Dreams. His books have won more than 30 national and international awards and are both Amazon and Goodreads favorite. Ebenezer was born in Phoenix, Arizona, the son of parents who came to the US from Lagos, Nigeria. Ebenezer's writing career began at the age of 20 and he has a BA and MBA from Bio State University. His seventh book and latest release, Rise, an inspired book of dreams, an epic collection of inspiring poetry and prose, was released on July 28, 2024. And on today's episode of Author Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today Ebenezer O. Makinde. Welcome on the show, Ebenezer.
Peter, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. I'm a big fan, and I'm glad I'm able to be here this morning.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, really. I must say I'm quite excited, really, to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, Ebenezer, I need to first say that I found the description page of your book, Rise, an inspired book of dreams on Amazon, to be quite compelling, intriguing, and I would like to ask you as to how the making of the book come to be. How does this book come about? What inspired you to write Rise? And how did you even come up with that title name for a book?
Yeah, Rise was a an idea that I had earlier this year,
Yeah.
going from 2023 to 2024. I just had just a feeling, in a sense, that it was time for people, even specifically more myself, to begin to move forward and march forward, pursuing some of the dreams and some of the desires that, I had in my heart, things that I'd been sitting on and procrastinating on for years and years and years. I just felt
Yeah.
a sense that it was time to move forward and march forward full speed. And, I'm inspired by a lot of different, great speakers, great orators, great authors, great writers. The flagship poem of this book was actually inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, and
Oh,
flagship poem called "Rise." If you read it, uh, the some of the literature, the writing devices that I use are derived from that poem. And so I think just the sense that it was time for people to start, pursuing what their biggest aspirations and their dreams were, and
mm,
also inspiration of some of the greatest orators that have lived, became sort of the seed that brought about this book.
wow. That's such an amazing one, really. I enjoyed you talking about the making of Rice and how the book came to be. It sounds like a lovely introduction into becoming a poet and a lovely introduction into
Mhm.
becoming an author. I love the sound of it. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. And for the sake of
Absolutely.
readers who haven't read the book yet, and of course, without giving much information away, could we have a sneak peek of what we'd expect in terms of themes, in terms of subject lines, picking up Rise?
Yeah, anybody who picks up Rise, my goal and my vision for the book was a collection, of over 200 poems that
Wow,
can inspire, can motivate, can bring
wow.
hope. And I wanted to be a resource, not necessarily for people to, read at one sitting, but they could use it on a daily basis and go back to maybe their favorite poem that can give
Mm.
them that piece of inspiration to pursue their dreams. And I think everybody, if I asked you, you probably have a favorite poem of yours that you've gone back to many, many times over the years. And I'm
Absolutely.
the same as well. Yeah. So I said, why not create a whole book of that? Where not every poem is going to be everybody's flavor, but when
Yeah,
you are reading a poem, there's something about it that's going to stick to you. There's going to be a sense of hope, of inspiration,
absolutely.
of allowing people to use their imaginations to move forward and march on towards their dreams.
Mm. Oh wow. I love your take on that, really. And I could relate as a fellow poet, I could relate to some of the things you've mentioned so far. Before I proceed to my next question, I'd like you to show the book to the camera. That's right, just so we see what it looks like. That's such a beautiful cover, really, you've got in there. I love
Thank you, thank you.
I love the way you insert the subtitle underneath the rice title
Hmm, hmm.
positioning. Yeah. I also like to ask you, which of the poem from Rice and Inspired Book of Dream are your personal favorite, and which do you think will resonate with readers the most?
Yeah, I mean to to your point, the cover, for your first point, the cover, if you can see it on camera, there's clouds on there that are sort of rising up, and
Yeah.
I wanted something that was simple and powerful. And in general, all my books are based on inspired events, meaning that there was something that happened that was sort of the impetus to create the book. And so all across the board, my books are based on inspired events. This one is based on it's a book of dreams, I call it.
Oh,
Every
wow.
poem is going to incorporate some aspect of dreams, the word dreams in general, and I wanted something that was powerful and also memorable. But
Hmm.
in terms of just my favorite poems, there's, like I mentioned, it's 260 pages.
Oh,
There's
wow.
a ton of poetry in here. Again, there's long form, short form, some span across, 10 pages, some span across one or two. I
Wow.
picked out three poems specifically, that I could, read on here. And there's a lot that are my favorite, but these three kind of resonate with me the most.
Let's have it.
And the first one is called Over the Rainbow.
About the
And it
rainbow.
goes over the rainbow. And it goes over the rainbow. Oh, there I go to a place where dreams fly to and fro, where the moon is big and the sunset bright, where the hills are green and the snow pure white, where the angels sing and the birds chirp too, where the love is shared from me to you, where the hearts are pure, where the needs are met, where the nighttime falls yet the young don't fret, where the streets are swept and the air is clean, where the mind is clear and all feel seen, where we dance for hours throwing off all cares, where we eat and drink and all men share, where the music's right and we sing our songs, where our hopes are light and all belong, where we live our lives with love and care and the gifts we have with all we share, with where the books are good and the coffee's great, where we fix our tents and stay up late, where we let our hearts pursue our dreams as big and bold as they may seem. Yes, over the rainbow, oh, there I go to a place where dreams fly to and fro.
Oh wow. I love the last ending line. Sounds quite amazing. And I love your recitation, the tempo. It keeps
Thank
and over again, going smoothly and quite solemnly. And I love the lyrics and the reading of the poem as well. You've got amazing, lovely qualities in that single poem you just recited. And I think you have some other ones for us, right? Do you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have two more.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, yeah, this one is called this one's called If I Could Only Fly.
Mm.
Um, and it goes, I look up to the starry sky and wish that I could only fly. The earth beneath, sedate and slow, our calloused hearts have made it so. But somewhere high, yes, way up there lives a world without a care, a place without a single sigh, the place I'd go if I could fly. The world we shaped is at our best, with turns and twists and dreaded tests. The people toil and put off rest and end up hurt with pain and stress. Only they could look up high and dream that they as well could fly. If only they could think with me and realize to dream is free. Beyond the clouds, we'd
Wow.
laugh and play. We'd all be up and away. Our warring hearts leave minds unsound, and anxiousness seems to abound. I wish that all could sit with me and dream of what our world could be. I stare up at this starry sky and wish that we could all just fly.
When you go to open mic, when poetry side work, you are told to do just snap, snap.
I see you
Don't
snapping.
interrupt
Yep.
don't interrupt the poet, only snap. I love those big heavy lines, yeah.
Yeah, I can see you're feeling because the snaps were going. That's common in
Absolutely.
the poetry world.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love the sound of it. Sounds quite amazing, really. The poems are quite amazing, and I like the fact that you had to recite those too to give us a snippet into some of the things we
Mm,
look forward to in your writing. Thanks for sharing.
absolutely. Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And I think to that point, that's the sort of the rhythm and the flavor of the book. Where
Yeah.
each poem has that. It's using sort of rhetorical devices to invoke imagination, and to really help to keep the pace of the poetry going. So as you reach one, there's still that constant pace. That kind of continues to reel you in. And
Yeah.
ultimately, again, the goal is to inspire and to spark imagination and to bring hope, to people.
Absolutely. There's resonance in it too. I could find some lines quite resonating. Yeah. Thank you. And I also found the
Thank
description page of your
you.
book, Light of Darkness, to be quite compelling when I read it, especially with the spiritual
Mm.
qualities that it possesses, which actually piqued my interest and left me in a curious state. Without giving spoiler, I too would love to ask you about the making of Light of Darkness as well.
Yeah, Light of Darkness is actually, it's the second book, that I published, but it's actually one of my favorite books. The premise of it is this: it's December the 9th of 2019, and I make a request to heaven asking what's going to happen in the coming decade in 2020 and beyond. And
Wow.
I seal away this request in a desk, and I basically let it go because it's in a moment of my quiet time, and I'm just thinking, I'm kind of reflecting in a sense. And on December 31st of 2019, I get a knock on my door at 1 o'clock in the morning. And two representatives, one from heaven and one from hell, have been sent to my door.
Wow.
And they say that they've been sent there so I might be able to interrogate them and ask them about their plans for the coming future in 2020 and beyond. And so basically, I've been afforded the opportunity to sit down with both of them and ask them about some of their strategies about how they influence the world, how they influence and seek to influence you and I and humanity as a whole, and some of their strategies. And we dive into a number of topics that are going to require, the reader to kind of think, but also to formulate an idea of who's actually telling the truth and who's not, because both of them say that they're out to do good in the world. And so it's that story. Underlying that, it takes the reader from earth to heaven and from heaven to earth. There's a
Mm.
gentleman that he dies and he goes to heaven and he sees this world that heaven is, and he sees um, these different buildings. One of the buildings is called the windows of heaven. He
Wow.
sees uh, different waters and different types of angels and different types of things that you wouldn't expect. He sees what how people's DNAs are given to them before they're sent to Earth, and how
Wow.
they're infused with purpose before they're sent to Earth. So
Oh, wow.
it takes the reader from Earth, and then you kind of see the meshing of the two as the story goes on, and it kind of brings you full circle. Not really giving everything away about the book, but it brings everything all together again at the end.
Wow. Sounds like you've got an amazing and uncommon theme in that book, Light of Darkness. Your description of it is quite
Mm.
uncommon and quite compelling, and sounds like something that, because when I actually read through that, I was like, okay, interesting. Like interesting. This is quite very uncommon, and sounds like something I would really love to delve into. Yeah. Then I read a couple
Yeah.
review under it as well, and yeah, I love your take on that really.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't, the way I wrote it, it doesn't give the reader any answers because I wanted the reader to be able to think about what's being said and to
Curiosity.
use their own this in a sense to decide what's right and what's wrong. I think, in our world today specifically, we have, sort of the blending and the graying of right and wrong in a lot of
Yeah.
different areas. I
Yeah.
think it's important to kind of, challenge the reader in a sense to really look at what is right and what is wrong, and how do I define out where do those ideas come from, where do those concepts come from, so
Yeah.
that book is infused in there, and it forces the reader in a sense to do that without giving them any answers.
I love the fact that you had to utilize that technique because I myself love curiosity. I love to ask questions in
Mm-hmm.
my writing and leave the readers to provide answers to themselves. Because I think it's a style that
Mm-hmm.
tends to keep your reader in a curious state while letting them to ponder, think long after they've read it. Oh wow, that was powerful. What does the writer mean by that line? What does
Mm-hmm.
it mean by that statement? Really, this is, I mean, something that
Mm-hmm.
would keep them mulling and pondering long after they've
Mm-hmm.
read it. I think it's a great technique, really, because curiosity is actually essential in the human life. I love your stand. I like to particularly hear that from you as a technique to utilize in your light of darkness. Thank you so much for sharing. Sounds quite lovely. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I also see that you write in the genre of children's literature as well as being a poet and a storyteller. Could you tell us how this came to be? Also, which genre do you find fun with mostly to write over another, if there's any?
Yeah. Right. As an author. it may be sort of unique to me in a sense, but I don't limit myself to any type of genre specifically
Mm.
to be my focus. And I mentioned before that my books are based on inspired events.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I read a lot of different literatures, and I can read
Oh,
something, be inspired by it, or see something, be inspired about it, and figure out, okay, what's the best vehicle in terms of genre to be able to communicate, the ideas that I have to the world in a sense. So, from writing children's books to writing short novels to mixing, fantasy and sci-fi and all those different things. My book, I really just look for inspiration as sort of the seed, and from there, I feel like I can move in any genre, that
mm.
I want. I recently just read Alice in Wonderland for the first time. It
Wow.
was written by Lewis Carroll in the 1800s, and I was inspired to write a story that kind of is along, those same lines, and I'm moving on into sort of that genre as well. But I haven't really written any genre similar to that. But I do feel, after reading that, after being inspired, that I can pivot and move into that and show some sort of dexterity in a sense as far as my writing chops go. But
Wow.
I do like, um, I think poetry is something that's, that I do like, that I think is sort of my bread and butter, if I was to kind of answer your question, because,
Wow.
um, again, everybody, has that poem that sticks with them over time. And I think, poetry, it piques the imagination,
Yeah.
it inspires, and it stays with you much longer than the book. So a lot of my books incorporate some poetry in there as well. And,
Wow.
that's intentional because, again, it allows the reader to take something with them after they finish reading.
Mm. I love hearing you talk about that. I love you talking about that. And I think I actually enjoy your response to this question so far. Really, I find it to be quite didactic, quite educative, quite inspiring, and well thoughtful and thought provoking as well. And I wanted us to talk a bit because I found your themes to be quite lovely and quite compelling. But then, one of the things that I found to be most interesting to me as a writer is to listen to readers' feedback. And you may want to agree with me that one of the things that make literature to be complex is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers based on their opinions. And sometimes the readers might get a message intended by the
Hmm.
author. Sometimes they might be close to getting the message. Sometimes they might be far from getting it. And sometimes they might hilariously misunderstand the book and interpret the book upside down. And as interestingly fun as this sound, I would like
Hmm.
to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your works differently than you intended? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as far as their interpretation, I as a writer, I encourage that, because, and that's one of the reasons why I've chosen to write, fiction and put a lot of my books into parable format, because I
Mm,
wanted to people from their perspective to interpret the work. And so my job is to, put ideas and concepts, through parable form, through story form. And then from there, based on their own mindset or their own paradigm, they then interpret the work. Now I haven't, up to this point, I've obviously, you get feedback and everything, and a lot of people, times people will pull, um, from different books that they've read, say this is what
yeah.
this is. And, I look at it, I try to look at it objectively and say, that's based on their life experience, that's what they're bringing to the table, and that's what they're pulling from the book. For example,
Yeah.
Light of Darkness, I read, somewhere where somebody equated to A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge, and then
Oh.
also to the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. And that was what they, compared the book to. And I had never thought about, those two comparisons combined in one. So I think it's very interesting to see people's paradigms and what they bring to the table, and how they interpret the work. And I sort of let them and give them the space to be able to do that, knowing that, they're bringing they're pulling from the work based on their own concepts and paradigms.
Mm, wow. Oh wow, that's a beautiful, and I think it's actually a very fun question to ask authors because this is one of the things that make literature and book conversation to be quite amazing. You can be in a book club of people gathering together, say 5 people, 6 people, and they're talking about a particular
Mhm.
book. The way the first reader would interpret it would differ slightly from the way the second reader would interpret it, and it would differ slightly from the way the third reader would interpret. So we all have different ways of interpreting works based on how we find it resonating with us. how we find it
Hmm.
moving with what we've been through in the past, and how we could process it from our personal processing thought and imagination. I mean, we can read the same way,
Yeah.
same book, and the same way you would interpret it would differ from the way I would interpret it. And over and over again, we keep composing and interpreting works in a different manner. And I love your take on that, actually. I love your take on that.
Yeah. Thank you. I would add one thing to that too, in terms of sort of the spiritual nature of, beings. Human beings are body, mind, and heart.
Yeah,
Heart I see as a spiritual nature.
yeah,
When there's something that's written or said that one spirit, and one being connects with another spirit, another being, that's when like you see that sort of that unity of ideas come together.
yeah.
In my first poetry book, Worth of Diamonds, I remember specifically I had somebody read it and give me feedback on one of the poems I had written,
Wow.
and his first question was, "Is this poem talking about depression?" And I was like, it actually is, but it didn't say the word depression. It was talking about clouds over somebody's head. It was very, it could have been interpreted multiple ways, but that
Oh,
individual got to sort of the heart of it, and I was like, okay, that's you understand it for whatever reason, whatever paradigm you're coming to the table with, you interpreted in the heart of it correctly.
yeah, I love that. I mean, and that's one of the things that make it quite fun. And I think it's a very satisfying experience for authors when they hear readers' feedback differ slightly, or readers bringing out something new from what they've written. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, that's quite interesting to know. I never thought about it that way. Oh, wow, interesting. Having read that
Hmm.
discover things that are new in your writing is such a satisfying, wonderful job. Satisfying the fact that you've done a good job. You've done a well written book. You've delivered an interesting literature works that people find to be quite interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. I love the sound of that. Thank you. And I also
Yeah.
like to ask you, could you tell us briefly about the making of your other book in the name of What of Diamonds? And I would love you to show the first one. That's the second one we just recently talked about to the camera. And also What of Diamonds, if you have a copy of it there, to the camera as well.
Yeah, I showed. Do you want me to show
That'll be,
Rise
that'll
again,
be
or
Light of Darkness to the camera. Do you have Light of Darkness there?
Light of Dark? Yeah, I do. So Light of Darkness is Light of
Yeah.
Darkness is here, and
Beautiful
you kind
cover
of see,
even.
yeah, you kind of
Oh,
see
and
the
now
two.
I can see those two, man. And
Uh,
you sound like the middleman. Listen to the
I'm,
conversation.
exactly. Yeah, I'm the middleman, and it's kind of vague because, again, I didn't want to put faces to the
Yeah,
characters in a sense.
yeah.
We're actually I recently just completed the stage play for this,
Oh, really?
and so it's about 2 hours in length right now. I completed the stage play, and the
Wow,
goal is to have this premiere and create a
wow.
theatrical production based on it,
Oh,
because it really
interesting.
reads like that. It's simple in format. The concept is easily transferable to the stage. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm excited about that. Hopefully, the end of 2025 would be the premiere, but we don't have an exact date
Wow.
yet. But that's what we're shooting for.
Oh,
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
Yeah, the Worth of Diamonds cover. It has again, it's based on inspired events. It has a crown, that's attached on the cover, and I think the flagship poem kind of speaks to, it speaks to the worth of individuals. And I had wrote it in beginning of 2023. There's again, I think over 200 something poems in that book, and I was inspired to write it because I had experienced some. Uh, I guess somebody that I loved very, very much, ended up passing away during that season. And it was kind of a tribute to that person, but also,
Wow.
a tribute to people who may not see themselves as being, you know, uh, worth, much at all. Maybe
Hmm.
they're struggling with their self worth or their self concept or their identity. And I wanted to speak to the heart of that and write a collection of poetry that could encourage people to really see their true value and their true worth, beyond maybe what other people see, with them
Interesting.
about them.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's quite
Mm-hmm.
nice. And that sounds like a very deep work of inspiration. Something to have inspired you to write it. Thanks for sharing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
yeah. And apart from the books you've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Yeah, so I mentioned, right now that I read a book, Alice in Wonderland, recently,
Yeah.
and I decided to write a book. And the basic title right now is Adon and the Castle of Dreams,
Oh,
and it's basically about a boy he's living, on his farm, and he has dreams of meeting, this king, and he's never met the king, but he knows the king is, sort of the ruler of all and governs all things and everything.
yeah.
And one day the king magically comes by, his farm, but unfortunately he's caught up in his own world. And by the time he gets to the path to be able to see it, or
Yeah.
see him, his caravan has already gone by, and he misses his opportunity.
Oh, wow.
And so he goes back to his farm, and he's goes to his place, where he draws or likes to draw in the sand all these different characters, the
Mm.
king and his comrades and everything. And so he starts sketching in the ground, and all of a
Wow.
sudden, out of nowhere, these characters, begin to come to life. And so he starts to follow them, and they take him on this journey into this fantasy world, where they see different kinds of creatures and monsters
Mm.
and characters that he has never seen in his life. And obviously it's something that's out of this world in terms of, what a normal human being will see on a day-to-day basis. But he ends up meeting these characters that ask him if he wants to go to the Castle of Dreams. And so they embark on this journey. Number one, to find the king's sword, is the primary plot of the book, but also to visit this castle to see this, great king that everybody's been talking about. It's a mix of, fantasy. It's again, it's inspirational. It's dreaming with, the or dealing with the dream world and the imagination. It just takes the readers on this wild journey, from his farm to the king's castle.
Oh, that's interesting. So basically, that's like a novel, right? Is it a novel?
Yeah, I would say a shorter novella. So
Oh,
it's probably going to
interesting.
be around 30,000 words or so, between
Oh,
30,000 and
wow.
40,000. So a little bit shorter. A lot is kind of packed into the story, but
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit shorter of a novel.
Sounds like you've got a lot ongoing, really. I hope you find some time to sleep.
Sleeping is important. I know it's like you do a lot of work, and so sometimes you're working late into the night and early into the
Yeah.
morning, and at random times when you're inspired. So the
Yeah,
work
yeah.
never stops, but the key is that you love what you're
I
doing, right?
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I won't add this part I wanted to say to the interview, but I could tell from the last email we had because I was looking at our time difference. I was like, it's morning here. Why is Ebenezer not asleep by this time of the day? I was like, I think we are 7 or 8 hours ahead of each other. I was like, this should be around
yeah,
2 or 1. It's time. It's still awake. I was like, oh, okay. Well, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted
I'm
to add
definitely
that
not.
to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I sometimes I'm up at one, and it's funny because I've been working with, people on the African content, quite a bit lately. So it
Mm.
just you just assume that they're going to respond to you at weird hours, and if you wait another 8 hours, you may not get another response till,
Yeah, that's
another eight
true.
hours after that. So you kind of got to be
Absolutely.
quick as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that too. That's very true. Thank you. And as a published author, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing and writing a book? And also, where exactly can interested readers get a copy of your book?
Yeah, I think, I think about it like this. I like this quote a lot. It says that, man is a reflection of his imagination.
Mm,
He's as great as he thinks he is. He's as weak as he thinks he is. If he thinks he's incapable, he remains incapable. If he thinks he is mighty, he will be mighty. And I think as an author, it starts with your imagination. And I think you have to
yeah,
sort of pull back a little bit, and take time to really think, okay, what's going on in my head? I may not be able to communicate that right now in the best way through paper, but let me sort through some of my thoughts and my imaginations, and what's really in my mind that I really want to communicate and get on paper. So I think
yeah.
it starts with the imagination first and foremost, and then figuring out, maybe it's note taking or writing down some ideas to get an idea of what really inspires me to write and put on paper and record, that'll be, here forever for people hundreds and 200 years from now.
Hmm. That's interesting, really. That's interesting. And could you tell us about the Porsche's platform as well?
So the platforms to get my books,
Yeah.
you can find them on Amazon. They're available, on Amazon to purchase. You could go through, my website. Also, they're available through Barnes and Nobles as well. And then I believe Target, Walmart, carries some of my books also. So pretty much anywhere online, but I think the primary two would be Amazon and Barnes and Nobles.
Interesting. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Ebenezer Makinde book directly on Amazon, Barnes& and Nobles on his website and also another platform. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Ebenezer, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say this is more than awesome. Very great, quite exciting, having this lovely conversation with you around your beautiful titles. Thank you so much for coming on.
Peter, thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, and good luck to you in all your endeavors as well.
Thank you so much. That got me blushing. I appreciate you.